Thank you so much for coming here tonight for the last event of our spring programming. I'm Sue Weston, the museum educator here, and we're thrilled to be doing this program on Torrington neighborhoods. We've been talking about doing it for a while, and all the pieces finally came together, so we hope you're going to enjoy this. So before we get started, I'm just going to explain that all of our panel members received the questions in advance, so they've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I've heard some of their recollections. I got a sneak peek at some of them, and think that you're going to be thrilled to hear this, to hear what's different with Torrington, what's the same with Torrington, and even if you didn't grow up in Torrington, what might be similar to wherever it was that you grew up. Bring back some good childhood memories of your own. So we're excited to have you panel members all here tonight. So I'm going to just introduce you quickly and get started on this so that we have enough time for everybody. And I've also told them I have the difficult job of being timekeeper. So you know, I know they all have so many memories that they would like to share, but I'm going to try to manage it as best we can and still let everybody say what they'd like to share with you all tonight. So starting on this side, we have Dave Bennett here. He's going to be talking about the North End. Cora Onelia Regis, she is going to be talking about New Litchfield Street. Dave Frigo is going to be covering the South End. Dr. Frank Vanoni will be talking about the West End. And Charlie Rohrbach is going to be talking a little bit about a bunch of neighborhoods because he moved around a little bit to a few different places. So I'll let him explain that as he goes on. And I'm going to take this off because I can already hear that that's going to be a problem with the microphone going. So, and we are recording the event, as you've seen, so that we're able to share this. We had a lot of people that weren't able to come tonight or that couldn't get in because we were sold out. So we want to make sure that we're able to share that and have these memories for posterity. So, so I'm going to get started, and I think we'd all be interested in hearing from you a little bit about your neighborhood. So, you know, 1 minute-ish, maybe a little more. Okay, Dave, Steve. Okay, guys, this is what it's going to be like. How about 2 minutes? 2 minutes, talk about overall what your neighborhood was like. What street did you grow up on? What was the neighborhood? What were some of the defining features of your neighborhood? And then we'll jump into the rest of the questions, just so everybody gets an overview of where you lived. So I'll let you kick it off, Dave.
Okay, anybody here from the North End? Keep me honest. I came home from the hospital on James Street, but when I was four, we family moved to 63 Benham Street. And there I looked out the back window and I saw the D'Angelo house facing Lois Street, and I very soon ran into the youngest child of the D'Angelos, Mario. You know him as Dr. D'Angelo, and we became best friends. But Benham Street, from Calhoun to Lois, was diversity capital in those days. And at the Calhoun Street Inn, there were several families that were Irish, including the O'Meras and the Bentons. Maybe you've heard of them. Then across the street were two Slovak families. Above them was another house or two. I don't remember who was in them. And then the Big Rock open lot. And after that were the Guys and the Jacobs, two African-American families. Right next to them were the Wilcoxes and the Wootons, all English. But right above them were the Lavalettes. You can tell me they're French, right? And then on the Lois Street end were the Galicios, Joe the lawyer, the Galicios. Diagonally across the street were the Mittmans, Germans. And then down from that, the Hopkinses and the Bennetts, some more dirty Englishmen. And then right below us, the Polish people. And then the D'Angelos had rented the bottom floor of their house on Lois Street to the Fleischers, Jewish people. We had it all. I apologize, though. We did not have any Latinos, and we didn't have any Asians. However, we had some very fine people, the Lebanese, all over the neighborhood.
Excellent. Thank you. Cora?
Yes. I grew up on New Litchfield Street, And we had the Doyles, the Doyle family. We had the coach from the high school, and we had the Molitors and the Kimberleys. We had no Italians. We were the only Italians there. But and everyone just got along.
Great.
They were just great people.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Mr.
Jim.
Frigo.
You got a job, I'm right. Well, I remember coming to Torrington because it was my birthday, October the 5th, 1939. And we lived at 420 South Main Street, which was next to the apartment house where Valley Park used to be. I would say I got a fond memory of the whole South End, from St. Francis Cemetery all the way up to St. Francis School, because I had to walk from 420 South Main Street every morning up to St. Francis School. And then in 1942, my father bought a house from Mrs. Scoville. They were the plumbers at the time, and she was in Iflin on Tracy Avenue. And we lived there for, I don't know, since I got married. But anyways, my experiences were multitude, because we had my father had the business on Hammond Passway. So from the center of Torrington all the way down south, if you want to know anything, I've been there. And I can tell you who lived in what neighborhoods, what the people were doing, and it was just a marvelous experience. And I'll leave it like that for any questions someone might want to ask. But I want to say something tonight. You see, we have four great people here. Charlie, too, but he's, but he's different. But we're here because we're all members of the class of 1949 Torrington High School, and we're celebrating their 75th anniversary. And that's
Great.
it.
Thank you. Okay, Frank.
Well, I was in the class of 49 too, but I'm much younger than the rest of them. Yeah, I had a wonderful childhood growing up in the West End on Turner Avenue. My grandfather had come from New York City. He was a twin. He and his brother weighed 300 pounds each, and they were bakers. And he started a bakery on Turner Avenue. The bake shop was behind the house, which was a quadruple house, 2 apartments on one side, 4 rooms on each one of the other side, and a driveway that went through the house. So I was always told by my classmates I had the house with a hole in the middle. And the bake shop was behind the house, and my earliest memory is dragging one night a big pail full of egg yolks that the baker had put out to cool for the night on a summer night to my sandbox. And I stirred it up with sand and put it back where I found it. I'm here tonight because my mother didn't quite kill me, but she was alive. But Turner Avenue was a wonderful place to grow up, and we moved when I was 5 to Funston Avenue, a few blocks away, to my other grandfather's house. And every house on that street had someone of a different nationality. And I loved growing up hearing languages and learning a few words in Polish, Slovak, Italian, French. We had Jewish people. We had a couple of foreign people. I didn't know where they were from, but they told me they lived in several countries. And it was just exciting to have them all there. And the thing I remember most was people coming to the house on holidays, especially with their favorite food of their nationality. And my mother would give them something Italian from our house. It was a great way to grow up and a great way to learn about all kinds of people. I was grateful for that forever.
That's great. Thank you.
First, by an opening remark, I was taught early in life to respect my elders. And as time goes on, I found that there are less and less of them to respect. But tonight I'm very lucky in that I have 4 of them for whom I have great respect and memories. And as I listen to the tales, there's just an echo chamber in terms of where we are and where we've come from. My neighborhood story is a little complicated because I was born actually in Hartford Hospital, thank God, because my mother threw an embolism and almost died. So I came out, ended up as an only child. My first residence was on 71 Holly Place, Torrington, which was a very quiet neighborhood. Dr. Goldberg was on one side, Mr. Baldwin on the other, the Crowleys across the street, the McFarlands across the street, and then down the street, Peg Ellis and the few snitches and the Hollies. So it was kind of a stuffy neighborhood. At the age of 9 or 10, 1940, we moved to Midgeon Avenue, 331, across from the house in which my father was born, actually. And again, a very stuffy neighborhood. I'm not going to go through the names I could, but in the interest of time, I'm going to go to my third neighborhood, which was my grandmother's house in West Torrington. And that was a little livelier because they had Best Park and the First Congregational Church and a lot of kids and a lot of activity down at the corner and fun time. My fourth neighborhood was that my grandfather was a milkman. And I was impressed into service at probably about the age of 10 to be a milkman's helper. And I did that for a number of years. And the route was the South End, South Main Street from the center down to East Litchfield. And all the side streets, Hammond Passway, Frigos and Mascarillos on Park Avenue, you name it. In the South End, we saw it all and lived it all. And people of all shapes, sizes, colors, and all of them so kind to a little fella. I used to collect, and final remark is I went into one house, and this people said, "Here, you have to try our wine," because every house had a barrel in the hallway. La Monica boxcars worth of full of grapes into Torrington, sold them all, and everybody made their own wine, and it was pretty good stuff too.
So Charlie, you can keep the microphone. And a lot of you have already talked about some of your best memories, but is there one thing that you'd say was your favorite thing, your best memory about your neighborhood? What was the thing you liked best about your neighborhood?
Which one?
So you take your pick. In your case, take your pick.
Well, the milk route really gave me an opening into the world of Torrington. And I guess my most fun memory was when the circus came to town. And Hendy's Lot was where the senior center now is. And in the old days, the circus would come, Hunt Brothers Circus would come in. And they would have truckloads of animals. And my grandfather was kind. We went and watched for a while the elephants pulled up the tent poles and they sent the tent. And those memories, I don't know how many people share those here. You all look too young, I guess. But I'll take that as my favorite.
That's great. Okay, Frank.
The families that were in our neighborhood all had children about the same ages as my sister and myself. And so we all had plenty of playmates, and we had a wonderful time every day. I got into a little trouble when I decided, when I was 5, according to my mother, that I was going to be a doctor. And I opened an office in my father's tool shed behind the yard. And one day my mom opened the door of the tool shed and found me examining some of the little girls in the neighborhood. My career almost ended right there. But it was a wonderful place to grow up. The children all played together. I was terrible at athletics. I never could throw a ball the right way. I never could catch a football. And the only reason they ever used me on a team was that I was the smallest guy in the neighborhood. And so they used to sneak me in for sneak plays in football. The other team would be looking for someone to tackle, and I'd be weaving my way through the line because they never thought I'd be the one with the ball. So that was a nice memory. But one of the best things was the variety of people who lived there and the different ways of life, and learning all this, which all became so important to me after I was in medical practice, and trying to understand all the different ways of living,
Right.
and trying to put it together to mean something. I'm always grateful for it.
Great.
Okay. Well, I have a number of them, but it's kind of appropriate right now. I have two special situations that occurred to me, and because we're there now. I was at the Alhambra Theater, December 7th, 1941, when the loudspeaker came on that the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. That's one of the most serious things at my age to hear coming over on that broadcaster that was in the theater at the time. And the other one was the 1955 flood, which is a little lengthy, so I will let that go by. It's very, I'll tell you, it's very emotional, so I'll let that go by for now. If anybody ever wants to hear it, I'll tell them.
Okay. Thank you.
The most that all the children in the neighborhood enjoyed, Saturday afternoon, you went to the Warner Theater for a dime and watched cartoons. And then we would stay for the second issue, Under the Sea. But and the best, well, they were older than I was, but the Doyles, and I think Bob Doyle might still be alive. And you went to their home, and it was like, you could do anything you wanted. The mother was working and the father was working in the drugstore, and we just, if we wanted to have something, we had it. They'd say, go ahead, just help yourself. And then the best store, though, was Mubrick's, Joe Mubrick. You could go in there and have an ice cream cone that big for 5 cents. And he had candy. He always had a lot of candy, and you'd go home with a bag for a nickel. And also, when I was maybe 7 years old, my dad had, in the back of the house, built me a large, not a little kitchen, but a large home. And I had a little table in there and everything, and the girls would love, all my neighbors would love to come. And we'd spend hours in there, and we'd listen to the radio. And then my brother Ray, who was much older than I was, my dad bought him a pony. Now on New Litchfield Street, you could have a pony, and we had rabbits and chickens, and that was in Brooker Memorial on the way to the Southwest School. And the neighbors thought we were great. We had a pony, and we had a wagon, and we really all got along.
That's great.
Yeah.
Dave.
As I mentioned, we had quite a few Lebanese people, living in the North End, and a lot of them were retailers. And my favorite place was Maroon Store on the corner of Main and
Tell them.
yeah, on the corner of Main and Lois Street. And on Saturdays, my parents would entertain. And during the summer, on Monday morning, Mario and I would dash into the living room, throw the cushions on the floor, and look for money that had fallen out of people's pockets. And we often didn't find very much, but we found enough to go to Maroon Store, and we bought enough licorice to make us sick the rest of the day. And the licorice sticks were about that long for a penny, and we just had a good time there. And they also had, I think, Mounds bars, and they put them in the refrigerator, not the freezer, in the refrigerator. And if you managed to get a hold of a dime, you could buy one of those, and they were tasty. So Maroon Store was one of our favorite places. Another of the places was Jacob's Store down the street, and we used to go there. We usually didn't have enough money for a sundae, but we would buy ice cream sodas. And as Mario always tells me, you always had vanilla.
Excellent. Okay, so Dave, we're going to keep it with you for a minute, and we're going to go back to your school days.
Okay.
So I'd like to know, where'd you go to elementary school?
North School, where else?
Okay.
No first grade, and they taught cursive. They taught cursive.
Wait, why was there no first grade?
What?
Why was there no first grade?
No, there was a first grade, no kindergarten.
Oh, no kindergarten.
There was
Okay, got
no
it.
get ready
Okay.
thing at that time. You were right into first grade and language arts and math. Okay, Miss Dorothy Creamer was the principal. She was a short lady. She went up and down the halls slapping her thigh with a razor strap. Oh yeah. Now, when we got through 7th grade, we were wondering whether or not in 8th grade we would get Miss Dillon or would we get Miss Sparrow. We weren't too anxious to have Miss Sparrow. She had a sister who I think taught in Southwest School.
She did.
Yeah, but one of them taught. Now, when it came to music, Miss Burns was very pleased with the 8th grades. We sang quite well. And one of the songs that we sang was a Negro spiritual. And the Negro spiritual, a lot of Negro spirituals, the slaves identified with slavery of the Hebrews in Egypt, okay? Now, they had to be removed from Egypt by Moses, remember that? And the very religious Negro slaves identified with that also. And the chorus of one of the songs that we practiced was, "Go down, Pharaoh, the king. Go down, Pharaoh. Go down, Pharaoh. Let my people go." Well, one day while we were practicing, we got to the chorus, and some rather deep-voiced boys in the back said, "Go down, Sparrow. Go down, Sparrow. Let my people go."
I went to the Southwest School, and from the back of our yard, I walked through the woods. I didn't go down onto the sidewalk. I would walk up in the woods, and I'd come out right where Thompson Drive is now. And we always had we had Miss Hines, who was very strict. She also had a belt. She always had a belt hanging. And one day the boys were out playing in the playground, and lo and behold, her wig fell off. Remember that, Frank? And I mean, we all trembled. She grabbed a hold of him, and she picked him up like he was, and shook him. And then we don't know. She took him into the office. We don't know what happened. She probably. But anyway, and then we had an Indian teacher then, Miss Sinan. I had never seen an Indian person, and she had enough makeup on for that day. I mean, and we all used to look and kind of say, "Nah." And she was a 3rd grade teacher, but very strict. Nobody wanted to go in there. No one wanted to go. And we had Miss Pullen in the 2nd grade, and she was my neighbor, and she was charming. But we had to pay attention. You wouldn't never dare to get out of line. You just wouldn't. You knew that there were consequences. And they didn't call your mother either.
Well, the experience I had was because we just moved into Torrington, and my father set it up for us to enroll at St. Francis School, and we had to walk up and everything and carry our lunch, and I had my younger brother Bob, God rest his soul, and he was going into first grade and I was going into third. And he didn't want to leave me because when we lived in Union City, New Jersey, we were at a convent school there, and that school had classes together, I guess, or whatever it was. And also, I want to mention my sister Mary. She was there with us. That our three of us were there. But anyways, he didn't want to leave. He started crying, and the poor sister in the first grade there, she got a little, because she had to leave the kids in the classroom and everything. So bada boom. I said, oh my God, I just hate me. And so, because we never had any situation like that, so I'm all alone. I got to go into the third grade now, and we had a lovely nun. I think she was from Torrington, Sister Phillips. She was quite elderly, and there was a crack in the door, and I looked, and she's yelling and screaming at the kids in third grade. I says, I'm out of here. I went home. And they had to really talk to me before I went back again. That was one of the experiences I had. And then I had another one. I was in 8th grade with Sister Matthias. I'm left-handed. And, you have to keep that piece of paper straight. I says, I can't write. I can't write. I got to put it on the side. Well, strap come out, or the ruler came out, whatever the case may be, but
I got that.
I never changed. She got the message.
Yeah, Cora and I were classmates for some years at Southwest, and she's mentioned a couple of people that I remember most, and one was the other Miss Sparrow. But the one I remember best, and Cora mentioned her, was Miss Hine, the principal. She did wear a wig, and it did come off the day the boy hit her in the head with a basketball. And it was a terrible experience for her, but it made us all feel pretty good. But the thing I remember most about her was that one day I was in the 6th grade, and I was on my way into the schoolyard, and I bent down, picked up some snow out of the sidewalk, made a snowball, and threw it nowhere, just in the air. I heard a knock on the window. I turned around. It was Miss Hine at her office window. She was on the phone, and she went, that was bad news. I went in, and she said, what are the rules concerning snowballs? I said, well, we're not supposed to throw them in the schoolyard. She said, and? I said, well, and you also said going home or coming from home, but you can't tell us that because you don't own that. Wrong answer. She took out she had a rubber overshoe that had a wooden block in the heel, and she put me across her lap, and I had to count the spanks she gave me with that thing. And I remember I had bruises on my rear end for days, and I was sure after that I was not going to pass. So I went up to my teacher and I said, do you pass if you go to Miss Hine and get a spanking? And she said, did anyone you know have that problem? I said, well, yes, a friend of mine. She said, well, if he does well enough in school, he'll still make it, so that's okay. So I was very relieved. But I do remember her very well. The rules were tough in those days. There was no fooling around. And that's one of the most important things I remember about the difference in things today.
That's okay, he doesn't work.
Yeah. My first school experience was Miss Goodwin's kindergarten on New Harwin Road, right over the bridge. You just start up the hill. And I was amongst some rascals you probably remember, such as Phil McDonald, Billy Danaher, and Jeannie Zolli, recently passed. May she rest in peace. But as I recall, I don't have much memory other than that. Every once in a while they let us out. And there's a little brook. You'd cross the brook and climb up a hill up toward Irving Avenue. And that was a real adventure because you didn't know what monsters might be lurking in the woods. I have no memories whatsoever of Riverside School, which is my first grade. Second grade, Midgeon Avenue School, I remember it all. I just had a conversation here earlier with the people here in the front row. The teachers from second grade, Mrs. Sieg, third grade, Miss Newt, fourth grade, Miss Hennessy of the Hennessy Farm up on Highland Avenue. She had a rather quirky personality in that whenever the thunderstorm came, she went into a closet. True story. The sixth grade was Miss Allison. And Miss Allison was the most lenient teacher I've ever had in my life, and we could read comic books. But was followed pretty dramatically and drastically by Mrs. Terry, who was a very rational, strict lady, and who I remember probably as being the best teacher I had in grade school. And I take a few memories from that. First is, we were told, the first is that at one time, where we sat in Midgeon Avenue School was covered by a mile of ice, which in fact it was, as I came to know. And my little mind went, well, what happened to it? And 90 years later, my little mind said, still, what happened to it? The next one was in hygiene. There was a lesson on nutrition, and it showed 1 bottle of milk and 3 bottles of beer. And it said that milk is 3 times more nutritious than beer, therefore drink milk. Some of us came away with the idea, well, drink 3 beers. And the other one is a little off the rails, but on social studies, we read the story of a man that went into the wilderness with a knife and a flint and steel and survived. And I've always kept that in my head. There ever come a time when everything hits the fan and the world blows up, that those are skills worth having. And there's been a little bit of that in me, but hardly enough to survive if it does happen. So, last teacher was Miss Klug. Her brother was George Klug. And she was a good teacher. And of all of them, I would say, we learned how to read, we learned how to write, except I couldn't, and we learned how to figure and do arithmetic. And the discipline was, Miss Metling was the principal, and no one wanted to go to her office. But in later life, I came to know her quite well, and she was really a very nice woman.
Surprised you. I'm curious, this wasn't on your list, but you were making me think of it, and as we go on to the next question, but did you have homework when you were younger? I know a lot of the younger kids today do have homework. I didn't have it that much when I was in school, but you probably didn't, or did?
Yes.
Some?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
We had homework.
Younger though. Elementary school?
Yeah.
Okay.
I never did it.
The secret comes out.
Write out the multiplication tables and turn them in, and penmanship exercises.
Okay. All right, great. So my next question has to do with what did you do after school? So for play, some of you have mentioned some things, but what did you do in your spare time? That may change too, depending on whether it was summer or winter, what the weather was like, but let me know some of the things that you guys did just to have fun in addition to what you've already mentioned. Charlie, you've got the microphone.
Okay. Well, there were no children in my neighborhood, and it was World War II, and so travel was restricted. Polio was rampant, and my parents were paranoid about polio, so I was considerably restricted in what I could do. However, one thing I remember, my father and uncle bought the back half of Ralph Pease's property next door and started a victory garden. fairly big victory garden. And so my summer activity in the it was weeding the garden. My grandfather was a milkman, and in summertime I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We went down to the creamery, loaded up the truck, and often running with the milk route, and got through noon hour. And I'd go into Doyle's for a lemon Coke, and he'd go into the tavern across the street for a beer, and we'd go back to my grandmother's house. And then Best Playground was a neat place to hang out in the summer with a bunch of kids, and we just played and talked and maybe grew up. I don't know.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Frank.
In the summer, we were outside almost all day. Many teams playing all kinds of games all the time. In the winter, and I can't believe this now, every time I drive up these streets, the town actually shut off Funston Avenue, where I lived, on Iowa Street, and let us go sliding on our sleds all the way down the hill, from the top of the hill down to High Street, which was right above the factories.
Right.
I don't know what people did trying to get through, but of course there weren't that many cars in those days. I don't think many of the people I knew on Funston Avenue had a car. Most of the men, my father and all the other men I knew, walked to work every day. Most of them did work at the brass mill and the Hendy Machine Company, which were across from each other. Brass mill was where the
Stop and Shop.
yeah, it was First National, whatever.
Right. Stop and Shop.
Stop and Shop is now. So it was all factories, and so not much traffic. But that was a lot of fun to have that street totally to ourselves for sliding.
And that's a hill.
There was a house about 3 or 4 blocks away that had a very wet area behind it. We called it the swamp. It was a swamp. And in the summer, we used to ice skate on that. There were more bushes in it than ice. And you really learned to skate because you had to turn the corner every couple of steps. But that's the way we entertained ourselves. Yeah.
That's great.
Well, for me, when we lived on South Main, not too much. My father started a store in the cellar, and my mother and my aunt, because they were always on the road peddling. But when we moved on to Tracy Avenue, my father bought the house. There was an extra lot, and we had a big garden because there were 7 of us, And when we got out of school in the summertime or whatever it was, we had to go in the garden and do what we had to do. And then we also had, like Cora said, we had chickens that I had to take care of. And my brother Bob, he was raising rabbits behind the garage. And then, when I was about 12, when we were down on the Hammett Passway, the summertime, go down the warehouse and go down the cellar every week. We had to turn over all that cheese on the shelves. And I think I probably got a $2, payment for the whole week. Yeah, but they kept us busy. And other than that, I never left the business. And to me, we had some situations there. I used to go down the cellar and instead of doing it, I'd just flip it, so it wouldn't stick. And then I'd go in the corner and sleep.
I was going to ask you if it was fun to do that, but apparently not.
Well, in the wintertime, we went to Turner Seymour Dam, and we had ice skates, and we could ice skate till my brother fell through, and I couldn't go anymore. That was it. And in the summer, we had a place up in Northfield, a cabin, and my father had had a pond, and we'd go up there and swim. But we used to take the pony, and we would go up to DeLay's farm in Harwinton to get the milk. We'd have to go from Northfield up to Harwinton.
Wow.
And other than that, we always had, I only went once, but my brothers used to play hide and go seek at Hillside. I only went once.
You didn't want to do that.
No, I didn't want to do that. And when I was in school, I had to come home and wheel my sister because my mother was so busy with the boys. So I'd have to take her out. And then after I took her for a little walk in the carriage, then I could go down and play with the kids. But we always had children to play with, always.
Well, we spent a lot of time outside, of course, as they've all been saying. And we built things, and we made things, and we built models. We built models in the early 40s. Mario built a model of the North Carolina battleship. They were about that long, and I did the Washington. And we built full-scale models of the Garand rifle. You ever heard of the Garand rifle? That was used in World War II a great deal by the troops. But the big thing, one of the big things for us was the hut. And I've got a picture of the hut here, and you can pass it around if you want to.
That's great.
We built this hut, I would say around 1940-41, with lumber that we got from Farley's lumber yard, scrap lumber over there, and from our parents, our fathers. And we built the hut, and we always needed nails. So we would try to get together a quarter and go over to Farley's, and he would weigh out about 1/4 pound of nails. And we used those up several times. But the hut got to the point where we were so proud of it that we decided to have my father come out and see it. So he came out and he looked it all over and he said, "Boys," he said, "this is the heaviest hut in Torrington. There's more nails in this than wood."
It's a good hut. It's like a little cabin. Okay. Let's see here. What were we just doing? Yeah, what you did for fun. So you're good. Now, okay, we're on to our next question. Sorry, I'm confused. Okay, so you've talked a little bit about businesses in the neighborhood. That was one of my questions. Like, did you have favorite businesses in the neighborhood? Do you have others that you'd like to mention, Dave? I know you mentioned a few, because there are.
In the 40s, I guess I would say that I had two favorite businesses in the North End. One of them was Chittister's store. Do you ever hear of Chittister's store? We loved, we'd go in there and look at all the toys, most of which we couldn't afford. And if we did manage to get a little money from birthday or something, we would buy a little something that we liked there. And that was a very nice store. And by then we had moved. My parents had bought a house over the next street over, Lorenzo Street. And up on the corner of Lorenzo and Marjorie was Doolittle's Bakery. And when Doolittle's Bakery baked bread, everybody's mouth in the neighborhood watered. It was just beautiful to smell that bread, and I will never forget that.
That's great. Thank you.
We only had, in our neighborhood, we had Mubrick's grocery store, which was this big, and the casting shop. That's all we had. We didn't have anything else.
Okay, great.
We had Frigos. We had Frigos, and I had the job to pick up the meat coming out of St. Francis at the Columbia Market on East Main Street. Louis and Mrs. Giampolo in there, and carry it home. And other than that, all the stores, I know every store that was on the bridge on both sides, down, like Charlie said, down on Hammond Passway and Muscarello's, and then on going down towards Fuseness Park, there was the Bachos there, and then before the entrance to where the bleachers were in Fuseness Park, there was Cesaro's grocery store there. But one of the things that, with the Bachos, he told me that time, he says, he says, they were open from 4 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock at night. And I said, 4 o'clock? Oh, yeah. He says, these guys that wanted a quick shot at something, we take care of them. Yeah, but 12 o'clock, oh, yeah. But he said, oh, yeah, we had to change it. Why? Because the same people, every time, 10 minutes to 12, 11:30, they'd come in and buy something. So he said, we're going to close at 10 o'clock. And we close at 10 o'clock. The same people, 10 minutes to 10. He said, they drive us crazy. Finally, we said, we close at 9 o'clock. But other than that, I didn't have too much experience. All I remember is all the Fulton stores that were around town at that time. There was one down on South Main by Doyle's, and then there was one, I think, up on the bridge.
By Howard's.
Yeah. And then I know Paul Denza, his father used to be a delivery guy at the Fulton Market next to Doyle's. And then years ago, I think the Neat James brothers, when they came from Cuba, they opened up a little store where the Valley Park apartments were. Yeah, and so then down where we were on Scoville Street, there were Hungarian somebodies. That they were from the Hungarians, and then it was the Massetti's. Ginny Massetti, her father had the store there. And then going down further, when I was a kid, though, when we lived on South Main in the Valley Park apartments, they had the egg store was there. The farmers would bring in the eggs, and they had to put them on the light to make sure they could be saleable. We used to help them out, pick up a nickel here, a nickel there. And then they moved down on South Main Street on the corner of Palmer Bridge. Other than that,
That's right.
there was no other retail stores down at that end of town.
Okay, great.
The businesses I remember from the West End were wonderful. We had Nee James Grocery. George Nee James had come from Lebanon, and he had this wonderful grocery store. And I can't believe it now, but we could walk in and say, George, I need a pound of something. He would give it to you, and he'd say, tell your mother it'll be $1 or something. And that was it. And we just walked home. He kept a record of how much we spent. And then once a month, he'd send the bill. That was the way we bought our groceries. Across the street from Nee James was DeFeo's Market. And it was the same kind of thing. Very family-oriented, a variety of foods, and a really nice place to just get things in a hurry when you wanted to make dinner. The place that I liked going most was at the bottom of Funston Avenue where we were living. It was a tavern. It was called a restaurant eventually, but it was a tavern. My father used to go down there with his two brothers every night after dinner, and my mother wasn't exactly happy about it, but I couldn't figure out quite why, because I thought it was a nice place. Whenever I went in, they'd give me potato chips or something to chew on. When my mother was away for any reason, my father would take my sister and me down to the tavern, go in and buy us hamburgers and French fries, and we'd sit out in front on the sidewalk eating our supper while he was inside with his friends. He was not a cook. And there was one other business that we all enjoyed, and that was a shoe store, a shoe repair shop run by Mr. Tatey. And you could just bring a pair of shoes down there. He would put new soles or heels on them, and you were all set again. They were as good as new. And that was all in the neighborhood and all within, I was going to say within walking distance, but then recently I just, with my car, I drove some of these routes. We actually walked all the time. My first job was in the tobacco fields in Simsbury, and to do that, I had to take the bus from where the Palace Theater was on East Main Street, which is now the parking lot for the Venetian restaurant. But I had to walk to that Palace Theater from the halfway up Funston Avenue at 5 o'clock in the morning. The bus picked us up at 5:30. We got to Simsbury about 6, and we worked until 4 in the afternoon. And then we had to walk home again at night. And it's no wonder we're still alive. We have all this exercise. If exercise is good for you, we had it.
I'm lucky that I worked on a milk route. I walked a lot, but I think it might have been better than being in the tobacco fields. And you know, but beyond that, the interaction with people was the most important thing in my life, to all sorts and conditions. I want to go back to chickens. When I was a kid, my father and uncle used to compete as to who'd get peas in first, or the corn would come in first, the tomatoes would get in first. There was an old farmer up on top of Hospital Hill by the name of Fabariello, John's grandfather, actually. And he sold vegetables, and he came in, he had coal frames, and he had the earliest vegetables. So my father and uncle would go up there to buy produce. And I was up there one day, and I was sort of the witness of an interesting experience in that I watched a chicken being beheaded by a hatchet on a stump. And then, what do you say about running like a chicken with its head cut off? I actually watched it, and it actually happened. Our neighborhood stores were the Fulton Market, Schwaller and McLaughlin, and Chapin's Package Store, and Rickman's Pharmacy. And I remember Mr. Rickman was a very stern, bald man with a hearing problem, with a huge device on his head so he could hear. And didn't seem like he could smile or like anything. He always looked very unhappy. I was, just a few years ago, I was at the synagogue, and there were tablets as to donors to the various improvements to the synagogue. And believe it or not, Morris Rickman's name was there. And he would be the last person in the world that I would have thought would have given away a dime. Favorite stores, Morrison's, because fixed up my electric trains. Fleig and Newberry, I was a camera nut, and Joe Newberry was a big help. My uncle took me to Abraham's Market in Lawrence Square a few times, and they had pink bananas. Now maybe that's my memory has failed me, but anyway, I believe I actually had pink bananas. And another favorite spot of theirs was 1930's on East Main Street. And my uncle was into Gorgonzola cheese. I don't know, Dave, if you ever sold Gorgonzola, but Nick had the best from at that time and place. And that was before you were born, I think.
Okay, I am going to ask this question. What was the best or biggest event in Torrington that you remember? I know you mentioned the flood, Dave, but is there something that was a big event that you remember?
Well, the Gavlik fire was a big event, but nothing rivaled the flood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We all have our flood stories. We could spend all night on the flood.
Maybe that's the next one we do. We'll talk about the fire. What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember getting there and seeing and hearing about it. It was a pretty ugly fire. Just totally destroyed what's left of the brass mill. The wooden floors were impregnated with oil, and once they got on fire, they just kept going.
Yeah. Yeah. Frank, do you have something you remember?
There are two, actually, that I remember. One is the bicentennial of Torrington in 1976. 70s.
Wasn't it?
The bicentennial,
Yeah.
1976, the parade. I had to march in the parade, playing my fife, and and the other one was the VJ night, going down to the center of Torrington after the war ended. The sirens were blowing. Amy Maritano and his orchestra were on a truck going up and down Main Street playing music. People were dancing in the street. The happiness because of the end of the war was so incredible. Everybody was kissing everybody, and I didn't know if there were germs or anything. But it was wonderful. I remember that very, very well.
I have to chime in on that because one of the items on my list here was VJ Day. And I know exactly where I was. I was on South Main Street in the milk truck about to deliver milk to Tracy Conway's house on South Main Street. The car radio came on that the Japanese had surrendered.
Ah. Great.
Well, for myself, it was that night because I was downtown selling newspapers. And everybody
Oh.
was, because the war has ended and all that. And it was so heart-wrenching to see all these people, like Frank said, the happiness that the war was finally over. And other than that, I don't know, when I got married.
Good answer.
Was that in the 30s?
I also remember that because my brothers came home from the war, and I remember that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. You, here. There you go.
Well, I might as well not speak at all, because guess what, as a boy, the most astounding moment was VJ night. And you've heard it from all these other people already, but VE in the spring was nothing, because we knew that a lot of the troops were being moved over to Japan. And it was nothing. We knew that the European war was over, that was fine, but nobody was dancing around or doing anything. But on VJ night, my father, who worked for Southern New England Tel, found that he could park up at the top of Maiden Lane in back of there. And so we parked up there, and we walked down Maiden Lane, and the first thing we did was to buy a copy. I think in those days it was the Waterbury Republican, and it said "War Ends" in letters that big.
Yeah.
Then we managed to worm our way around to the right and climb up on the steps of the granite block. Do any of you remember the granite block? You had steps up to Brooks Bank.
Brooks Bank.
And we got up about 4 or 5 steps so we could look over everything. And right in front of us, evidently, was a car. All we saw was people on top of something that inched ahead about 4 or 5 inches in 10 minutes. And the rest was just solid people all the way down and across the bridge to the park. Solid people.
Yeah.
And it was a tremendous and amazing thing, as these gentlemen have also said. It was really, it was really something.
Great.
So,
All right. I am going to ask one final question and leave it to you guys to, one final memory that we haven't talked about that you'd like to share with the group before we turn it over to them for questions.
okay, I guess it's my turn again.
It is.
When we were little children in North School, there was no World War I, because there wasn't any World War II. You follow me? There was the Great War. That's what the social studies teacher said. There was the Great War. And there was no Veterans Day. There was Armistice Day. Okay? There was Armistice Day. And a number of the teachers, when it was social studies time, did something that I had forgotten all about until I saw this. It was Memorial Day this year at Coe Park. Okay? This was the program. And inside the program, I came across this. You probably can't see it, but it says, "In Flanders Fields." Do you remember, some of you older folks
Crosses row on
remember
row.
that the teachers would bring this out?
Yeah.
And they really would have liked it if we had memorized it. I didn't have a memory could memorize all that. But some kids did memorize the whole thing. And in closing, I would like to read it to you if I can keep from cracking up. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses row on row. That mark out place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Also, we used to like to go downtown on Thursday night. You couldn't walk on Thursday night. And
Everyone was
you
out.
would meet everyone that you ever knew. And we thought that was great. We'd go over to Opperman's and have something across the street. And we thought that was terrific.
Right, right. Great.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. And that's something else. Because they always tell me I talk too much. But I don't know. I just think that the people, so friendly. I had the experience being in the business of talking to all these immigrants. I want to say this. I want you to know, I'm the son of a coal miner's daughter. Now, it's hard to believe. But my mother's father was a coal miner in Oklahoma. And that's where she was born before it became a state. So I can proudly say I'm a son of a coal miner's daughter. And but anyways, all these experiences of all different, not just the Italians, all the other people that came to this country, what they had to do, and the sacrifices they had to make because of where we are today. And it just marvels at their tenacity. And even my own family, what they had to do to get over here to start making cheese. It's something else. But anyways, thank you very much. Great people. Anytime you want to call me up, I can talk to you about everything on the South End.
Well, David, I want to thank you for reading In Flanders Fields. That has a special memory for me. I was in 8th grade when the Second World War ended, and Miss Hine, the famous Miss Hine with the wig, asked me if I would read In Flanders Fields at a school assembly to celebrate the end of the war. And I had to learn that poem to recite it. But in general, all I can say is that being born and raised in Torrington and working most of my life in Torrington, it's a great place. It's had its ups and its downs. I get sick every time I see that empty Conley Inn, Yankee Peddler Inn fading away when we had so many wonderful times there. So many things changing now that are not good, but I have faith that it's going to come back. It's been the most wonderful place to live and to be a child and an adult and a working member of the community. And I just hope we can see it all back again before very long.
these are tough acts to follow, for sure. And Flanders Field brought to mind that the day after tomorrow is D-Day. And I actually ended up at Normandy 4 or 5 years ago and was there. And being there just was an incredible experience. Just the geography, the cliffs and the machine gun nests and whatnot, and what people had to go through there. And today's world, we seem to have forgotten what our forebears had done for us. And we're all too much wrapped up in ourselves. And you know, in Torrington in the old days, I have made a list here of the Italians, the Irish, the Germans, the Hungarians, the Polish, et cetera, et cetera. They all had their churches. They all had their social clubs, White Eagle, Skokel, Sons of Italy, Germania Society. The French Huguenots were here. And we all had we and they all had their separate cultures, but they were able to get together civilly in the public square. They could call each other names. They always did. My God, we did. And yeah, we were friends. And you know, Frank and I and Dave, our generation, I think, is well merged. Most recently, I came out a couple of years ago. I declare now I'm a member of the human race. And I did that during COVID when you had to fill out all these forms, race. And I finally said human. And the reaction has been interesting. Some people didn't know what to make of it. Others thought it was quite thoughtful. But Torrington was the place where I really learned that. We had all sorts of conditions, languages, religions. We've been very lucky. I hope Frank's right. It's going to come back.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I know we're over a little bit, but questions from you guys that you want to ask while you have the opportunity to ask our panel. Sure.
What can you tell us about the Alhambra Theater when it burned or prior to that?
I used to go there with my parents because of the vaudeville show.
Where?
The Alhambra.
I don't remember if they showed a movie. I think they did. But it was a vaudeville show that I just loved. And my dad was still, he died when I was 12, so I was quite young, I know. But there were many times when the acts on the stage were dancing girls, and some of them were very skimpily dressed. And every time one of them came out, he would go. And my mother was not happy.
As far as I know, on the Alhambra, that I remember, it was an opera house. They had all the special sections along the walls, you know, where people with the money could pay and look down on the stage when they had the concerts. There was a beautiful, beautiful theater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The San Carlo Opera Company used to tour, and they did some performances at the Alhambra.
But they did show movies previous.
Oh, yeah. That's where I was when the war broke out.
Where was it located?
I'm sorry?
Where was it located?
Right
On South Main Street.
on South,
Yeah.
Right.
South Main Street.
Yeah.
Where the parkade
Then we have
is.
the Palace
Across
Theater.
the street from the park.
Then we have the Palace.
Right next door to
Yeah.
Frigo's
Yeah.
cheese store.
You know what it was from the bridge, okay? You had Mrs. Smith that was Jess Smith and his brothers, the lawyers, that was their parents.
Yeah.
And then there was, around the corner was Kurt's Fish Market, and then there was Dunny's Taxi.
Yeah.
But then going south,
Yeah.
you had Balsamo's on the south side.
That's right.
And then you had an old Italian, he was a pharmacist. And then there was the Hammond Insurance Company, and then Hammond passed away. Roger Valley had his gas station.
That's right.
And then there was a diner there. And then there was the Anderson Building.
Torrington Grill, you're right.
No, Torrington Grill was over where the library was. And then you went down, right after the Anderson Building, they had a tavern in there. And then there was the First National Store. Then there was the Alhambra. And in the Alhambra, I think the Mancini brothers, they had their dry cleaning. Then they moved all over on East Main Street. And then there was a Chinese laundry. And then there was a tavern. And then Charlie Mascarello, he put Park Florist there. And then on the corner of Spear Street, there was the Reinberg family. That was Francis and Jim Reinberg's family. The father worked for Fox.
I remember him.
Yeah. And then as you went down on the other side of Spear Street, there was Clark's Buick Agency. And then afterwards, after the flood, that's where we put our store, was Weigel and Rauch's garage there. And
Well,
then,
where was that Italian store? You used to go up 3 stairs.
that had, well, in the Anderson Building, I think it was one of the Marolas that had it at one time.
You used to go up 3 stairs and they had an Italian market.
That was probably there at
Yeah.
one time. No, down the south end.
Where was the Palace Theater?
Palisade was East Main. I was
Main.
there
Yeah,
like
East
Frank in the morning,
That's right.
Next to the
walking up to
Venetian,
go to work on tobacco fields.
which is why I don't
Then
smoke.
we had the State Theater, and I used to have to go on a Friday night, because
Yeah.
my aunt had to make the dish. They'd give you the
Oh, they
dish.
give you the
yeah.
dish.
Give you the different
sure.
cups
I
or
like the
something.
dishes. Yeah.
I got a question now. Since you were on South Main Street, there are Corey's. They had Victor, Elizabeth. Were they in your area where you had your cheese
Corey's?
store, or your dad did?
Corey's?
Yeah, remember Corey's Market?
Oh, Corey, MK, down where the South School
Yeah.
was. Sure,
Oh,
Michael
okay.
Corey. He was very good in town.
I remember that.
And then there was the Lebanese on the corner. Corey's,
yeah,
the
well,
market,
they are
the market. Vic Corey, he was the tallest Lebanese in town.
Oh, yeah.
I think, and they took him into service. I think he was like 6'8" or something. And then there was an Irish guy. He had on the other side. He had a little market there.
Yeah, they had the
And-
market, and then they lived right around the corner, at the corner house.
And the Harrington family lived upstairs in the apartments over Corey's.
Yeah, okay, 'cause I think all the Corey's owned that stupid.
Oh yeah, they lived on the corner of Meadow Street.
Meadow, that's it, Meadow Street
Yeah.
there,
Where was the
yeah.
moving van? My brother was born down there.
Where were Daly's?
Yeah, my brother was born up there.
Oh, Daly's were just that's where Palmer Bridge is. But
Victor, Nellie, I think Mary, there was Victor, Elizabeth. I
Yeah.
think Elizabeth was the oldest.
yes,
Yeah. Nellie, Nellie was tough. She
Yeah.
was a tough
Then there was
lady.
a tavern. There was a tavern down near your house.
yeah.
Yes, always black. Yes, that's right. Elizabeth was a nice lady. Yeah, she would.
Effie's got a question back here.
The Christmas Village, was it always used just for the Christmas season, or was it used throughout the year?
That wasn't an arch, not in
Didn't
our-
start till later.
What was there before?
The playground.
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 Albert Memorial Playground. I played there.
Did you hear what she said? Albert Memorial Playground.
Okay.
I can't either. What year was the Christmas?
Right here.
You didn't mention anything about high school. Like, where did you go to high school?
What?
High school. Where did you guys go to high school? Torrington,
Vogel
right?
Yeah, Vogel.
Yeah. Vogel.
THS.
Hopkins. Yeah.
You're talking now about the 40s again, which is what this tonight is supposed to be about, 30s and 40s. We started at what had been Wetmore School,
That's right.
Yeah.
but they turned it into the freshman class, where the freshman class went. And then when you became a sophomore, you moved over to the high school. It was completed in 1918, because the building before that in 1914 had burned down. It had been an academy. It had been a small school that was added onto many times, including on the top there was a observatory that opened up with a telescope in it. Crashed to the ground in a fire in 1914, and the new school opened in 1918. And the style of the school was like schools, everybody thought this was a wonderful thing, and it was. And there were schools along that H type of design all over. If you go to Bristol, you'll see a bigger version in the old Bristol Central High Schools, very much like Torrington High School. And that's where we finished up. And there were bicycle racks out back because there weren't a lot of kids bused in those days. You rode your bike to school and you could lock it in a rack. It was out back of the school. There were rack after rack.
We had one girl from Burville.
Wow.
From Burville.
Oh, yeah.
We had one.
Somebody in here had a question?
Was there a technical school, high school then?
Yes, it was on South Main Street. It's just had, that old building below the Armory has just had a pointed roof put on it.
Right next to Duncan.
Oh, that's the old trade school.
Yeah, that was the old trade school.
Trade school.
Trade school, yes.
Yeah, Glen Royals owns that now.
Mr. Hughes, that's who it was,
Who?
the principal.
Hughes, yeah.
Yes, Hughes.
Hughes.
Okay, well, I can't say thank you enough to all of you for sharing your thoughts with us, coming out tonight. All your humor and your wisdom, and just appreciated every bit of it. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of you for your thoughts and your participation as they're talking through. So thank you, and have a good summer if we don't see you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Charlene Sesko brought some chocolate chip cookies. They're in the back of the room. You might want to stop there.
Yielding.